was, do you cut or scrape? And I didn't know what they were talking about, frankly. I mean, it turned out I scraped, which I didn't realize. I turned. And so then for many years I would just say, I went to art school. I'm not a technician. I went to art school. And now I'm adding the fact that the last few years I haven't turned a lot because of medical reasons, moving, so I'm really rusty. So now that you have all that disclaimer about what I'm capable of, then I'll do some churning. But I did want to show you a couple of the early tools. Grover said they're older than he is. But this very delicate little piece was great. So you can do it. And I won a residency and went to live in England, and I was so intimidated by the English turners that I thought, I have to learn how to use a gouge. And that's after all those years. So I finally learned somewhat how to use a gouge. This one I won't pass around, but come and look at it. And this is another one. I dyed this piece, and Bob Stocksdale used to come to our little local club meetings, and I said to him one time, Bob, what kind of wood is this? Because he prided himself on his knowledge of wood. And he said, I don't know. And I said, I dyed it, and then he hit me. So one of the things when I was at school in this woodworking program, Jerry Glazer, this was in Southern California, came and visited the school and did a demo for us with his scrapers in those days. And he sold all of us students bar stock. And I forget, he used to know what steel it was. I mean, it's a very good steel, it really holds its edge. And I bought several of these, and because it was this big bar, it probably was longer when I got it, the students, we all thought, God, that's a lot of steel to waste to put in the handle. So we decided we made handles, 2 pieces of wood, routed out groove for it, glued it back together, and came up with these silly thumb screws to hold it in, and then I have a tool at each end, 2 for 1. So I have some really old tools. So this is, I don't know, we figured out the other night, it must be 45 years old.
Merryll, some of Jerry's early tools were made out of CPM 15D.
That doesn't sound like it. Yeah, that doesn't sound like what you told me. I probably have it written down somewhere.
Okay.
So the other thing which always strikes me as funny, is people and their signature tools that they sell. Because, so here's another one, 2 tools, different shapes, is that if you needed a shape, if you wanted something, you just went to the grinder and you made the shape. You must have done that. Yeah, you made whatever you need. So I was doing something with an undercut, and I needed just a tiny little round to do it. And so you just go to the grinder, the old gray stone, and grind away. So I can pass my fantastic old tools around. Eventually, I did buy, this is probably the first gouge, and there's not much left of it, but I still use it. And Jerry also made for me, when I went to England, at some point I was traveling back and forth. I used to demonstrate at the Practical Woodworking Show, and I called myself a tourist attraction. That they brought this older woman in to demonstrate. And Jerry made this great tool for me. Can you see it here? It's 3 different gouges that fit in this one handle, and it pops in, sort of. It should. I just found this. I have not completely unpacked. It usually makes this, so it didn't go in right. Maybe it's not working. I just took off the tape on it tonight. Uh-oh. I hope nothing happened to my tool. I love these. Well, they would pop, but it wasn't locking. Let's try one more. So, look at that workmanship. I'll pass this out because it's really gorgeous. No, something's wrong. Uh-oh. Wonder what happened to my tools. My most trusted tool. Anyway, so the other thing, I saw Jerry all the time, living down there, and did you know Tom Trammell? There were 2 guys who ran the school, Tom Trammell and, now I forgot his name, but there was this interchange between all the wood programs. From San Diego State, the teachers used to come up and visit. So Jerry came out with this screw. This is before his screw chuck. And so I bought 2 screws off of him to make my own screw chuck. And did it with a faceplate and a plywood block. And now in my mind, I'm like, how did I get the pin to lock it? How did I do that and make sure it was centered? But I did. Eventually I took it apart because I changed lathes and I had some really old lathes. So I'll pass this around because Jerry's screw is the absolute best. I haven't found any other on the screw chucks. And when you see the teeth here, you can see how gorgeous it is. I used to teach a furniture design class, and one of the students used to sell orthopedic supplies. And so he brought his screws in one time and drills for what they use when you have one was for an ankle, when you break your ankle. And those threads were like Jerry's. So I think he must have bought medical supplies and then machined them because I've never seen any other one as nice as that. So eventually I splurged and I have 2 of these because I finally bought a one-way. And then I have an English graduate lathe. I don't know if you know that one. It's a short bit. And to me, it's the height of decadence. So I do the outside of the bowl on my one-way, and I do the bottoms on my one-way. Then I take it over to my graduate because it has its short bit and curvy ends, so you can just put your hip into it. And I've had arthritis, back problems, and it saved my back. And then I turn the inside, then I go back. So tonight I was just going to do, I developed just using jam chucks, ways of turning so that I do lots of sets of bowls. I have a voice problem, which I'm sorry about. But I lose it or I get, I don't know what. So I was going to show you. So I have some postcards there, you help yourself. But I will, can you see this? Too close, huh? So I'll have I do a lot of box bowls. I've done lots of tea sets. And when I first made my first tea set, I kept making 6 bowls, and one kept breaking. I mean, in one way or another, I kept breaking the 6th bowl. And then it turns out in Japan, they only
We
use...
fixed it.
So what was wrong?
The ferrule goes over the top of the tool.
Oh, that's why. I had it. See how rusty I've become? Anyway, so I'll start out with a basic shape, and then I'll change it in some way or another. So I've done like towers of bowls, 15 bowls in little boxes, and I'll change each one in some way or another, whether it's color, texture, and the feet. I spend a lot of time with the bases of bowls. So I thought tonight what I'd do is start roughing out one bowl, and then I have some ready to go with the jam chucks. So I just keep this screw chuck is on my lathe all the time. So let's,
That's a one-way?
huh?
That's a one-way?
This is a Glazer screw chuck, and I don't know if it's still available. Somebody said it is.
Similar ones.
Huh?
If not that one, similar ones are.
Similar ones. This one has this front part unscrews, and so you can use the smaller ends. So like I use spacer blocks because I don't want to screw in that whole length. It's such a pain in the, you know what, to have it tighten on. I mean, I don't do green wood, that's number one. I do dry wood. I do large platters, but they're all dry wood because I started it from furniture. I don't think I've ever, maybe I've turned a green bowl. So on a piece like this, a little tiny plate, I may put on a spacer block, and it's only holding on those few threads. And it's only because these threads are so sharp and so thin that it really can hold this on with that little bit. So very rarely will I use that whole thing. I just have tons of these. Sometimes I'll use one, like if I'm doing, I did a whole series where the bowls fit into a 4" by 4" box. So the bowls really are like 3 3/4 max. Then I'll have like one like this, so when I'm turning, it matches exactly what I'm going to do. And then I don't want to cut into here either, there's that. So I use things like that. So for this one, though, I pre-drilled, and I'm just using that. So it's going in about a 1/2 inch. I have to use friction gloves for strength. It makes life so much easier. So on my lathe, and I advise people, I made big wooden hand wheels. They're so nice to use, you know, like about that thick. And it really helps something extra to hold on to. So now this one I didn't even turn on before. Do I need to know anything about it? So one of the secrets of the reversing, I mean, I don't need the tailstock, really, unless it's really out of round. That's another one. I don't like to do things that are really out of balance. I have a bandsaw, and that's what it's for. I will cut off. It's faster to cut it on the bandsaw to me. Maybe for greenwood it's another story, than to waste my time carving it off. I think there are probably people who love that challenge, but I'm not one of them. I want to make my life easy. I'm not used to this thing. So, this point and this hole, and I always use a cone, so when I reverse chuck, I'll show you, I can get in really close. But that center point is the thing that makes it really quick and easy for me to reverse later. How far does this one go out? Probably that's enough. It's funny, I don't know if any of you know John Kelsey. He was the first editor for Fine Woodworking magazine, and now he writes I think the lessons for AAW. He's always been a wood writer, and I mentioned to him that, God, John, all my stuff is so old. Like, I didn't realize till I moved somehow. And he said, I wonder how that happened. How did that happen? So let's see. Okay, so I do have some gouges. I mean, I have this one because somebody gave it to me for a birthday present. And this is another Jerry Glazer, and it is nice. I told Doug I've enrolled in his sharpening class because I don't know how to use the jigs, and I just do it freehand, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't cut, I go back to the grinder. See, I went to art school. Actually, a bunch of us, when I was in art school, enrolled at a LA trade tech. And they had a class in tool maintenance. It was fantastic. We sharpened our drill bits, we took table saws apart, how to set the jointer knives. Nowadays, you don't even have to do that. And so there was a lot of industrial art students taking the class, and 5 of us, including my husband, joined in from the art department. And it became this constant every week was they accused us of ruining machines because we only cared about making something. And we accused them of never making anything, of just having perfect machines. But there is an attitude thing. Okay, so are we on the middle belt, or is there such a thing? It says 0. Well, that's not 0. Whoa. Oh, that's weird. So when I turn that on, this says 0. It doesn't tell you that it's set at 1500 RPM. That's not cool. I don't know, it feels so hard to me, and I can't see. Let's see. I had cataract surgery a few years ago, and I had the guy, you can pick your lenses. So I have what the doctor called a woodworker's lens. I have a close-up and a mid-range. And I can then turn without glasses when I'm here. It's crazy, I know. This is so strange. God, I can't see this. Oh, yeah. I normally don't clean up the edge. I just start curving it from the bottom because it's faster. But this has like a double image. Oh, that's right. So what I'm going to do, where did I put mine? Is try to do one that has a deeper foot. That's how I play with design. Like I'll take one shape and then I'll say I'm going to make a larger base. Or I'm going to make a tiny bowl, like here a tiny bowl on a big bottom. Or this one has a high foot. So that's something in a design way that I play with a lot. So I'm going to want to, I think I have one here. So come up with something that has that angled foot. But I'm not going to do it before I turn out the inside. If I start, depending on what I'm doing, if I want a really skinny little base, like here, if I were to make that base the way I want it now, it's going to be too much vibration to turn the inside of the bowl. So I'm always going to leave it thick, and then come back and clean up afterwards. I've done large platters where I do a reverse rim, and I found I was taking away the bottom too much in that rim. So I have to plan where the pressure is going to be when I'm cutting, and make sure I leave that material for the final part. So I'll get a little more off. Yeah, I love my old little guy. So I use an old Axminster chuck that I got in England, and it has the dovetail jaws, and I guess the one you have. And I have a lot of different jaws, which means I don't want a new chuck, but I lost the key for it. And I called Axminster. I have one that's really long, like for platters. And they don't make them that way anymore. That's the trouble when you're like me and keep things forever. So they said they looked all over to see if maybe one was lying around, but they don't even have it anymore. And I have so many accessories so that I can have a 1-inch foot or I can have a 3-inch foot. And the keys don't, they might not match. So I'm like, I'm going to go, somebody told me to try an auto body store because of course it's metric, and of course it's square, and of course nothing here works with it. So So, but I do know my chuck at home is 2.5 inches, and I had a little ruler here somewhere, a pencil, someplace.
Pencil's right next to the box on the right side.
Right here, okay. So, right now I'm at 3 inches. And I'm gonna want my little base at like 2.5 approximately. That's the wonderful thing. So when I started, there were no chucks. It was face plates, and when I reversed a bowl, I don't know if you ever did this, made a tenon,
Oh, yeah.
and you had to fit it, and it had to be perfect if you didn't want your piece out of round. Then Bob Stockstill had a chuck. He was the only person I knew, and he was proud of it. And it was a machinist chuck. Then they came out with these chucks that worked on, what do they call it? When it tightens down, it had slots in it. But you still had to be pretty accurate for your foot to fit in there. And then when you tightened it down, it tightened those springs and it would hold your piece. But you still had to get it pretty perfect. Then finally, when I went to England, I met the Axminster company, and they were buying these chucks from Czechoslovakia. And, you know, it doesn't have to be exactly 2.5 inches. It could be even 2 1/4. If you get a 4-jaw chuck, and that's how they all are now. And I don't think once you make that switch, you could ever go back. The first piece I ever turned was that set of rice bowls. And they put it in I just had an exit retrospective. And my kids remember, I wanted to see how thin I could turn and you could still eat hot rice. And so I kept them mounted on the faceplate, because I took it off that faceplate, you would never get it back to be round again. And what if I wanted to thin it out? And so my kids at the exhibition remembered having dinner in the rice, with the rice and the rice bowls attached to faceplates. And that was so funny. They went around telling everybody, they remember eating out of those. So I'm going to turn a little more off. I do not bother cleaning up the bottom when I have boards like this, because what's important for a chuck is when I cut this part to fit into the jaws, is that this part is flat and sits on the jaws. You probably all do that now. But see, so what's in here doesn't have to be perfect, and I'm going to clean that up later. But where it sits here is what's important, and how it fits there. Now, I don't know if these jaws would match mine, but this is where I use my old carbon steel tools. I know. We talked about you the other night. So I'm going to turn a little more off and then clean this up. And then I'll cut that foot. But I just want to see where I am. This is where I love this little thing. Is that me breathing?
Right.
Sorry. That's the biggest problem I have here is the dryness and, oh well. Is there something we can do?
Okay.
much wood it helps.
Maybe. So, no. So many years ago, I don't know how many, but John Jordan, somebody else told me that Sears Roebuck Craftsman used to sell these, I thought I brought that one tonight, but it's straight across, two angles, high-speed steel. They were 14 bucks. And so by rounding off that edge, then I can use it for a shear scraper. And it works quite beautifully, and you just sharpen it, you know, like any scraper, which is easy. So I don't know if you can still buy them. I have 4 of them, 2 round and 2 straight. Because I come back and do a lot of reshaping once I carve out the middle, I don't sand until the end. The other thing is, even in dry wood, if you're churning a very thin bowl, it starts warping, you know. It's the stresses in the wood. And so I've found in my rims, you get a slightly thicker and thinner edge to it, which I hate it, because I see things like that. My contractor at my house told somebody working, if that line's not straight, she'll see it. And I can't help it. I come out of design, I see things like that. So that rim used to drive me nuts. It was a little bit thicker. And then I could come in from the outside. You couldn't do it from the inside. Even holding my hands, you know, against it to keep it from wobbling. I could come carefully, turn it from the outside. And that cleared it up, but then you'd have to sand it. So why bother sanding beforehand? So I'll come in and do this. I was thinking, Tom, you said Tom Lucy doesn't like sanding. I don't actually mind that much. So in England, they would brag about starting, they turned so well that they started winning it. And in those days, I was doing this texture on the inside of a big platter with my angle grinder. And and 35 grit discs. So, and they love to tease each other. So they'd say, I start with 8, and somebody else would say something else, and I'd say, I start with 35. So, no point in being too serious. One thing I've noticed here, so it's got to be the dryness. And since I mean, you eventually turn dry wood, is that it's much more powdery. I found I turned some mahogany and it was just like sticking the dust to everything. And I don't remember that in the Bay Area. So there's a lot of things here that are different. So I might quit now and then go to bottoms. I mean, I'm not gonna turn inside out here. I don't know about other people, but I found when I first went to my first turning thing, it's me. But to sit and watch somebody turn out a hollow vessel, I thought was the most boring thing I've ever seen in my life. Can't help it. You know, like I saw Todd Hoyer, and he's turning, and then he'd stop, and then he'd jump out the shavings, and he's turning, and then I thought, no.
You have to go see Trent Bosch do one in 5 minutes, and that was not so boring.
Oh, really? Yeah, probably. I mean,
You're right, though.
that screw holds so tight that it will take off the whole thing unless I hold that so it won't unscrew while I'm unscrewing the bowl. So that's it for that. So then, I have some more someplace. That's what I don't know. So under my workbench, I have a bucket filled with these jam shucks from all the bowls I've turned. And I found my local turning club in the Bay Area, because it bothered them how, I'm not a technician. And so they wanted to give me a vacuum chuck. And a couple of the guys, they're funny, it was a great group. So they came over and they set up this vacuum chuck for me. And then told me I needed to buy a couple of little things, which of course I didn't. And then I had a kid working for me from Canada for a while, and he only used the vacuum chuck on big plates. I've even done big plates that way on plywood discs. And then I found I have these things, and that if I fit into a bowl, let's see what we got here. If I make this jam chuck and it has a cone shape on it, on platters and plates I used to make it so it really locked in. It had a ring that held it in place. And I've even gone so far on big things to use packing tape to make sure it won't come off so I can turn off the final foot part. I remember when I started, there was this, maybe it's still that way, this attitude that if you could see how somebody chucked their bowl, especially like in Australia, it could not be in a show. They would kick it out if they knew how you held it. So you had to hide that and disguise it. And then there was a turner in California, Hapsakwa, and he said, well, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. It's like, you know, this is how we do it, so why not show it? You know, there's all these arguments that have been around for ages and did affect your works. So when I first started, there was another thing that it had to be a solid piece of wood. Well, that was great when I could buy stock that was 20 inches across, but at some point, it got harder and harder to find boards wide enough. And so then I glued something up and I was like, oh my God. I laminated up wood to make a big board. And then I decided it's a design feature. So then I'd carve part of it. And I got really good at disguising. I've even glued feet onto little walls, but I got really good at disguising through carving, through the way I turned it, that people wouldn't know that I glued it up. And then I came up with other methods to beat the system. So I would screw something like this on. I don't know if I need this, but. Okay, some of them won't bottom out. So that hole is helpful because it'll help line it up. But if it doesn't fit like this, there's movement here. It should really fit on, but by having that slight cone shape, I have a little more play in how it's going to fit together. But this one feels like I need to clean that up a little bit. Oh, I know what I did. I didn't do that thing to show you my tool. I forgot. I'm going to have to go backwards. Sorry. I put things down, never to find it again. Wow. No, I forgot a whole step, and this is totally for you, John. Right there. Where's the piece I just turned?
Is that better?
This one. Okay, yeah, I was going to show you how I cut that foot. You're next. So when I got one of my first lathes many years ago, it came with a chest full of tools and some even handmade slight gouges, very, like somebody milled out. It was really pretty rough. But of course it was all carbon steel. There were some Buck Brothers tools and other ones. And this is one, and it was, a skew, small skew. And then you'd go to a garage sale somewhere and you could buy these things for a couple of bucks, little carbon steel tools. And I find they're really handy because, first of all, they're inexpensive, they're really easy to sharpen, and I use it for one job only, nothing else. I don't use it for, okay, this is bad. Where did I lay down the tool list?
The tool.
On the other side of the box.
On the side of the bottom.
That's the problem. My husband was a professional photographer and ran a professional lab for printing for Hollywood. And, you know, they're working darkrooms all the time. And you have to put things back where they belong, because you're in the dark, you'll never find them. So this thing and this angle is perfect for cutting my little dovetail fit, and it works perfectly every time, and it fits my jaws, and that's the only thing I use it for. And I sharpen it, you know, when it needs it, but it's absolutely perfect. And this moves out of my way so I don't kill myself. This is so short, this just, I'm going to take that out. So the secret is, because it's at this angle, is what I want to do is when I'm cutting in for my little foot, is this has to be perpendicular to the lathe bits, and that's sort of my guide. I don't think about this at all. It's just that edge has to be perfectly perpendicular. And if I do that, it works. I mean, once in a while, I might miss, but because I have the two set up, I can just walk over, and if it's not right, I come right back to my screw chuck. So everybody should have two lathes, I think. I mean, I've had some really crummy lathes. I had an old Wallace, and if you know that brand, but it was out of Chicago, and it was a half-horse motor. The head churned. It worked on a flat belt, about 1.5-inch size flat belt. And I churned all my huge sculptures, my giant barbells, pieces with plastic. It worked perfectly fine. And the guy I bought it from used to make furniture for movies. And he had a floor stand, since the head churned, that he made a metal base, and you stood on that, and then the post came up, so you were the ballast to keep this from moving. And I mean, I used that really for giant pieces. So I never, you know, I mean, it did its job.
Move this further.
How far will it go without falling off? Don't take
To
it
there.
off. Really? Oh, good. So I'm just kind of eyeballing that this is perpendicular to my bed. And then I just, this lathe is so high for me. That's all I'll do. So then it goes back into its place. And I don't, it's funny. So I have a bunch of these oddball little tools. Like there's an old tool that I find as a gorgeous thing on the bottom that was this shape, very flat, but slightly that upside down V shape. It's a scraper, and mine's carbon steel. And I don't know what it is, maybe I'm just used to that tool, but when I need to clean up a flat bottom, it just does the perfect job. And for the cost of it, you can't beat it. Okay, so now we'll do the feet. I'm gonna need my trusty little thing. Blazer, if anybody met, he was a wonderful person. So now let's say want to make, maybe I'll duplicate this one. So, not that. That's not the right one. Maybe it's this one. So I'll just pull out a whole bunch. I'll get the closest one I can find from my collection, which is big. I got rid of a lot of backing blocks when I moved for platters. I had huge ones. But now I've developed this way of doing so I don't have to reverse my giant platters, because that's a pain. So we're going to clean that up and fit, but let's see, maybe that'll hold it enough. So this hole here is, from this part, is crucial, because that'll hold us on and I don't need anything else, if it fits snugly here. Is this loose or no? It's tight.
There you go.
This is loose? Okay, perfect. So I might turn this on and see that that's, see, slightly out of round. Can you see the bounce? Because I screw them on and off so much. So then I'll come in and clean that up a little bit before I put this on. Because automatically, it's going to throw my bowl out of round. When you're used to the machine, then it goes fast. So I want to get that round. So let's see if that's enough or if it fits. When I'm doing this a lot, you just develop your eye so it goes really fast. Yeah, it feels like it still needs adjusting, but let's see. That works. Ooh. Okay. Let's try that again. exercise or you go hiking, like one day you're just the best, everything works, and then the next day you go, or a week later, and it's not working. I find there's some of that in here. A friend of mine was a production turner in San Francisco. She did all the San Francisco restoration of their Victorians and all of Oakland. She was an amazing turner. She used to talk like if she took vacation, that she'd lose muscle memory. That you had to turn you had to do it every day just for muscle memory. And this still doesn't feel right. So. I'm going to take off just a little more. Yes, I can do this. And let's hope I'm not going to make a fool of them. Maybe. No. Let's see. Well, it is that around. But we're gonna. It's not too bad. So I can make a lot of decisions here how I want this shape. So let's say I want an Asian one where I'm going to go thinner at top and wider at bottom. And as I said, I don't like to do that first if it's going to be sticking away from when I'm turning the inside. I wanted to have that support so that there's not vibration when I'm turning the inside out. But then I can fix it now. That's why I don't bother with part of it. Did any of you ever hear of Art Carpenter, the furniture maker? He's from California. He was very famous, and one time I did a craft show and I used this textured underbody auto paint on a piece. And Art comes up to me and says, "Whoa, what an idea. You can hide all your mistakes that way." And I said, I hadn't thought of it that way. You know. And then he started painting his furniture, like, whoa, I see. How's that? Well, it's at around, so I keep getting this wrong, height-wise. And it's so stiff. Are these made for you? No, those are robust. It still feels too high. These are actually safety glasses. I buy. But I try to get a really big bifocal, and it's so impossible to have them believe that that is what I want. I want half bifocal, half distance. So then I can come in and clean this whole thing out. Texture, I could make beads, I could spaces that don't, that the size and the bowl don't match really, that it's like it draws your attention to it. I might make a totally oversized vase or a little one. It's all about design for me. Yeah, I put my watch away. What time is it?
8:15.
So how long do I have?
So we got 15 minutes?
15 minutes?
We end at 8:30?
8:30 is when we come out.
Okay, so 15 minutes.
Okay, so, we'll just do so I can come in here. I'm going to show you another small plate. This is, oh, I'm sorry, this Lathe and I are not totally getting along, but these two things are in the way. So I have to come back, and that's going to fall off. So I'm going to move on to another piece, because I'll never get it back. But I can come in, and by using a cone on the bottom, I can get really close with the teeny weeny, I have a teeny weeny little gouge. I can get all the way in there and clean that out with a cone, as long as I don't hit my cone. But yeah, you can do that. So I was going to show you, you can do, where did that one go? Here. And that. Oh, here. So I do a lot of these kinds of little plates, probably a little shallower, and then I can carve the rim, and I will talk a little bit about that. And then do the same thing with something like that. Just enough to keep it from wobbling. And I do the same thing. I use this chuck a lot. We're gonna unscrew. I think also, this is a wide tool rest, isn't it? Is it for stability? I used to share a shop with some furniture makers, and we each had lathes there. So this is for a much smaller hole, but I'm going to fix it. So twice their students broke my tool rest, like on an Oliver lathe. Like, how do you do that? So I guess Powermatic designed it. No one can break this. Okay, thank you. So because my little hollow in here is pretty shallow, I'm afraid if I make a wider cut, this this will be too deep, it won't bottom out. So I'm going to turn away some of that. I have a very good friend who's a cabinet maker, and periodically I would go over there and get plywood scraps. They always have so much scrap. So that one needs a lot bigger. So it's the same system. So we only have a few minutes.
12.
Okay, so then I'm going to stop this, and because one of the things people always want to know is about some of the finishes. I will show you. This is a texture tool. I'll just draw some lines on here. But I bought up a lot of, I don't know if you have places like that, but we used to have like surplus stores that you could go, and they always found high-speed steel or leftovers from something. And so bought a bunch of 1/4-inch square high-speed stock. And then I just make a handle for it of sorts. And I can also use these for like one job. So I'll pass this one around. I use that just to make lines on the bottom, and it gives you a texture that looks not like much right now, but once you start playing with finishes, it just creates a whole different thing. But you want to take a look. So it's just this small point, and this will need sharpening a lot, but because it's a scraper kind of thing, and it's good steel, then I just come in, and I don't like, that's a personal thing, I hate when people are so accurate. It has no life to it, but that's my thing. I prefer just to eyeball it, and even if the lines aren't even, it still reads. And that's a big thing, is like mistakes can be hidden, and they add to your design. And sometimes when we used to talk about that in art school, like you keep making a piece and you know what's wrong with it. So the next time you make it better. And then at some point you've made it so much better, it's absolutely dead. It has no life. It's like there's some perfection that ruins your work. Do you want that on?
No.
So I play a lot with, as I said, bases and finishes. And I pick my wood according to how I'm going to finish it. And I brought samples. So come up here afterwards, but these are samples I actually did for an article for the Woodturning magazine in England. So where can we put these somehow? So what I did is take 3 different woods. So you have oak, bird's eye maple, and mahogany. And it's the exact same dye on each. The yellows are all the exact same mixture. This is upside down. And then I put on, this is the dye by itself. Then I did an oil finish, and then spray deft. So it's just something to make you realize that wood has color. So if you're gonna add color, it's gonna be different on every piece you use because of the base color of wood. So like I started doing these pastel plates, really soft colors in the beginning, and I couldn't get beautiful pastel colors, and I went to this place that sold, I was using fabric dyes and wanted to buy white. Can I buy white? I need white for my dye. And they looked at me, because there is no white. You're starting with white fabric, you start with white paper. And so wood doesn't have that. And then I found if I bleached my wood and got it white, but you can't bleach mahogany, won't go 100% white. So then I would use a maple. But if I wanted to do dark wood, or I wanted texture in the wood, like here, or this piece, because the grain is so prominent, then I might torch this and burn out that softer wood. And then it creates a texture by itself. But I wouldn't do that to maple. Like, what's the point? There's nothing, maple's so dense, or mahogany. It's just nothing's going to happen. But if you use a wood that has a lot of pattern in it already, and a lot of, I mean, you can just feel that. And then I can control. Although that's another thing I've learned since I'm here. My propane torch doesn't get as hot. And I tried burning a piece recently, and I wanted it to crack, wanted the wood to wrinkle, and it wouldn't do it. And I'm like, oh. And then I guess it's like my teapot boils water at a lower temperature. So I guess the propane doesn't burn as hot. I don't know.
Doesn't have as much oxygen.
I guess so. Somebody said I'm going to have to get nat gas to get that effect. There's lots to learn here, I tell you. So I will use woods depending on what I'm going to do. Like this one is a beautiful piece of white oak. And I have been able to make it just wrinkle. You have to be careful burning that it might have cracks. What did my husband used to call this thing? Dissonance reduction. So you don't want something to happen where you have a decision like between two things, and then you pick one, you make one decision, or my wood cracks. And then I say, oh, that's exactly what I want. That's dissonance reduction. And he said, you know, we do this all our lives. You know, you have two equal things, but then one becomes exactly what you want, even though you might not have right away. So something like this. This one has a threaded rod in because it goes on a tall pedestal. So I pick that way. I'll pick woods, like this is a Clara walnut, and it's so beautiful. I would never add color to it. Like, why would you bother? It's such a beautiful wood. What else? This is a mix. So I mix and match a lot of things, and probably at some point we should just do a whole finishing thing. Because like this will be burnt, and plus it gets rid of your carving tear-out marks. I found out, you know, when you carve with rotary grinders, you get little burrs and fuzzies. Burning can take that away. And then I have a lot of other tricks to take away that. Then I'll add dye to it. And then my final finish, I add more color. And so I learned this from painters, really. By layering colors, it has more depth. And then I can't remember how I got it black, but this is milk paint over. Have any of you used milk paint? So I brought some just to show you, not so much that, just how it comes. And my bag says $8.95. It's only a couple years old, but it's now $14.95. And I think $18.95 comes in. But you get free shipping, big deal. And the company now charges $10 to ship, which is expensive. And then I repackaged them into things like this, because the powder will last forever, the mixed milk paint won't. But that is something I love to change, so we'll figure something out. And there are pieces I start. Like this shape to me is a fun shape to just play with. So I can do, see this is made with that same pointed tool, with just lines. I don't know what I did to the bottom. I just play is what it is. Like the first time I did a tower, they're like over 6 feet tall with 4-inch openings, so like 15 or more holes. First I had an idea, I wanted this. And then I ran out of ideas. Then I go, okay, what's next? And then I just say, okay, let's try this, so let's try that. Or one time at Anderson Ranch, somebody glued, we called it the pistachio shell finish, and glued pistachio shells all over. You have to have somebody eat the pistachios. And then you paint over it. It's actually quite nice. So I have, part of it is just letting yourself experiment and not worry about it. And so I have samples here of things I've done. I have a postcard here. This is a sample. Huh? Okay, I'll quit now. So I did these saddle bowl tables. I turned these big bowls. This one's brick-laid up. I don't know if you can see this. And but I used to entertain a lot. And there's never room on the dining room table for the salad bowl. So I thought, well, why not just make a separate table for it? And so that's what this became. And these were my samples. I did one that was white and one with this red color. Anyway, that's it.